Hi, I'm Bill McLoughlin with Gourmet Insider Magazine, and we're here today at New York Loft, where Fagor America and America's Test Kitchen are going to unveil a new pressure cooking initiative. Why don't we go on inside and see what they have cooking up for us? Okay, we're here with Jack Bishop from America's Test Kitchen, Patricio Barriga from Fagor America. Gentlemen, what are we talking about today? Patricio, what do we have here?
Yes, well, what we have here, Bill, is this tremendous initiative, which is basically using the pressure cooker perfection cookbook that America's Test Kitchen produced as an exclusive Fagor item in order to really continue our journey of educating and, of course, bringing the message of healthy cooking living to the American kitchen. That's our journey. So we have found this wonderful partnership. And we truly believe that it's going to benefit, not just bring consistency to what, as Fagor, we keep on doing on the world of pressure cooking, but also expanding beyond, because it's a rich sort of recipes here with a lot of food ingredients that for some people even are going to be new. So yeah, that's where we're standing today.
Jack, how did America's Test Kitchen decide to look at pressure cookers? How did that come about?
Our core mission is to teach people how to cook at home. And we feel like, first and foremost, we're educators. And there are a lot of misconceptions that the American public has about pressure cookers. A lot of that dates back to the models that our mothers or grandmothers used, which were less than ideal, let's put it that way. The technology has completely changed, and so the mindset, though, hasn't really changed. And so the pressure cooker feels like it's a great way to cook today. There are a lot of benefits it's one of those things where it's faster and better. Most of the methods that are dedicated to fast cooking, thinking of the microwave, it's always a trade-off. And you sacrifice some quality in order for speed. The pressure cooker is interesting because you actually can get more quality in addition to getting faster results. And so it's really appealing. I think the other thing is that because all of the action happens out of view, that people really need some help, because it's not like most cooking where you can look, you can taste, you can really adjust. You put the lid on, you lock it, and you really need to know what you're doing at that point and have a good recipe that you're following so that when you take the lid off, you have what you expect.
Exactly. No, that's quite true.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the misconceptions you think that consumers still have about pressure cookers, and how have today's pressure cookers kind of addressed those?
Well, I think the first one is about safety. I mean, everybody's family seems to have some story about some great aunt or grandmother who ended up with pea soup on the ceiling. That really can't happen in the modern pressure cooker. There's all kinds of venting systems and safety systems. And so I think that's the main sort of impediment, that people feel like it's somehow scary. It's also new and it's different. It relies on a piece of equipment that many people may not own. So the first hurdle is to convince them that there's a benefit to making the investment in getting a pressure cooker. And as I said, we're one of, the two things we hear over and over from people who read our magazines and watch our TV shows is they want it faster and they want it healthier. And so, this is a good way to do both of those things, because it cooks a lot of foods that people have trouble with, whole grains, beans, much better and much faster than on the stovetop. And it cooks everything, meat included, much faster than long cooking methods that are on the stovetop or in the oven in a conventional pot.
Now, I noticed in the book that you have some models that you recommended very highly. What makes a good pressure cooker model versus one that you wouldn't recommend? What are some of those things that it should be able to do for the consumer?
Right, so we have a team of 4 people who evaluate kitchen equipment. We don't take advertising at the magazine. We're on public television, so we don't take advertising there either. And so what they do is they go out and identify the top selling models and then set up protocols to evaluate how to test them. And we do 2 things. We will do tests where we're cooking. So we made beef stew, made chicken stock, we cooked beans. I think there were 6 different cooking tests, and we're really looking at performance differences. The other thing is we'll come up with more quantitative tests. So we were measuring the thickness of the bottom of the pot. There's a lot of heat at the beginning of any pressure cooker recipe, and so a thicker bottom is going to regulate that heat much better. There's often a lot of browning at the beginning, and so a wider pot, a pot that's 9 inches versus 7 inches, is going to allow you to brown, whether it's meats or onions, more easily than a narrow pot. We looked at things like what temperature it really was when it reached full pressure. It should be around 250 degrees, and the best models were there, and models that got a lower rating were below that, and that just means they were going to cook slower. Because the whole secret of pressure cooker is to raise the temperature inside that pot.
Yeah.
And so if it's not actually doing that, well, that seems like that's a problem with the model. And so there were 2 of the 12 models that we felt were clearly much better than everything else that was out there. And the Fagor was a third the price of the other one. And so in addition to being highly recommended, it was our best buy, because at roughly $100, depending where you're shopping, was a really easy investment. Especially for someone who's not used to pressure cooker, it's not a lot of money, relatively speaking, to be able to get started using one.
Patricio, what made you decide, or what is it that you're going to be doing with this, what you said is a wonderful cookbook?
Well, certainly we saw the value not just because of the introduction side, which is a very thorough how to use the product, keep the product, maintain and operate, but also when it comes to the recipes, to Jack's point, it are so elaborated, it looks so gourmet, but at the same time easy of doing. So addresses the perfect, in my opinion, probably the best pressure cooker cookbook ever written. And we decided to take this into the trade and in a different way. We're going to use this as a premium item. We're going to support our specialty stores or retail partners, giving that product away whenever we do cooking classes, whenever we do demonstrations or trainings for that matter. So yeah, we see the value of the quality of the recipes, the quantity of the recipes, the elaboration, the way that they're explained, and really professionally made. And so for us was the perfect match to all the effort that we're doing, and of course we don't have the talent when it comes to the software. I always call this the software of the hardware. And it's really, you guys have produced.
Great analogy.
Yeah. It's software what makes the product more attractive, because we encountered the same issue as Jack is saying. At the beginning, whenever we came to the market, is an awareness of what this product is good for. And outside of the safety aspect, people was just doing maybe staples. Just rice, beans, and little else. And what else is good a pressure cooker for? And then people start learning that it could be an extremely sophisticated piece of cookware, because you can do gourmet meals and from scratch, and not just to think that it's only quantity and time. So yeah, that's what we found in this book. So we're going to do all that, and beyond that, we're going to bring some of this material to the online space as well, because we're going to do some online cooking classes. So all the promotions, events, use are going to be driven by education, support to the message, the ultimate message, which is healthy cooking or healthy living, which is what we stand for. The project is just out there, so we are already creating those classes, events, workshops, and what have you.
Now, Jack, America's Test Kitchen does lots of different cookbooks.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever done one like this where there's been a kind of exclusive vendor edition, or is this something kind of new for you too?
It's new for us. We got the call from Fagor, and we said it sounds like an interesting idea. This is the second appliance-oriented book we have done. We did a slow cooker book a couple of years ago, which was really our first foray into a set of recipes in a book targeted to a specific kitchen equipment or appliance. And the book had a tremendous reception, and we said, well, what sort of comes after the slow cooker? The exact opposite is kind of its faster twin is the pressure cooker. And it's been a really interesting learning curve for us on how to do this, because obviously the piece of equipment is central to the success of when you are cooking, and that as opposed to a lot of other recipes where the piece of equipment may be important but isn't quite the determining factor, that when you're working with pressure cooker recipes, and same thing really with slow cooker recipes, that piece of equipment is really the be-all and end-all. That's the first thing you can do to make sure that you get good results. And so that's why we had combined both recipes as well as general troubleshooting, how to use them, as well as ratings, so that which pressure cookers do we think you should go out and buy if you're going to go buy one, because that seems like it's a really important part. It's much more important than which spoon you're using, let's say, if you're stirring, something that, what pressure cooker you're using is really going to make a difference.
For the consumer, when the average consumer buys a frying pan, everybody knows how to use a frying pan. There's no break-in period. There's no learning curve. For a pressure cooker, there's, I would suspect, a certain level of intimidation to the consumer. How hard is it for the consumer to take that out of the box and get up and cooking?
I don't actually think it's that hard. I mean, I think you need to understand how the pieces fit together, and you know, sort of like any appliance that has multiple pieces. You know, even though this is a stovetop model that has no electric, I think it's more like, you know, when you start buying a food processor or a mixer, you should read the manual. I mean, that's a useful thing. Unlike if you buy a skillet, you probably don't need to read the manual. You know how that works. But if you're going to buy a pressure cooker, read the manual. But it's really, you can be cooking in a couple minutes. There are a couple of sort of key things you need to learn how to do. I think the most important things are, one, make sure you understand how to get the lid on and to lock it into place.
Is that particularly hard to do?
Actually, no. Why don't you show us, Jeff?
Oh, you're going to make me show up. So, well, I'm going to let you do it because you know what, you're the expert. But I think
He unlocked it first.
Yeah.
You were expecting it to be locked.
yes,
Yeah, it's very simple. You just, that's all you
See,
do.
now it's locked.
yes.
Yeah.
And so locking it, that's the first thing. Understanding the gauges, and one of the things we looked at was the gauge that indicates that you're at high pressure. Is that easy to read and easy to understand? And on some models, it's, you know, any child could look at it and understand that, oh, this is now at high pressure, and others it was a little bit harder. So understanding how the gauge works, and then making sure that you do a good job of taking care of the gaskets is probably the third thing. And so on the inside of the lid, what's really causing that seal is a rubber gasket. And so you want to clean this well each time. We recommend that you might want to put a little bit of vegetable oil on to keep it lubricated over time. If you do a lot of cooking over many years, you may want to eventually replace this part. This will probably not last, you know, for 10,000 uses on the stovetop. It's not, but the rest of the pot will last forever. But this may over time break down, especially if you don't do a really good job of washing and cleaning it. And that's really it. And then, you know, good recipes and understanding. You use less liquid in a lot of recipes because there's no evaporation. So that if you're trying to convert a recipe that you've sort of made in a regular pot, you really do need to think about it a bit differently. And that's why specialized recipes are probably a better bet than you taking a recipe you usually make in a Dutch oven, for instance, and then just throwing everything into the pressure cooker. It's probably not going to work because you're not going to have the right amount of liquid in it. And the big thing that is to get excited about the flavor, because I think the number one thing people don't think about is the benefits of the flavor, and that everything stays in the pot.
That is true.
And that, you know, people love the idea of filling their home with the aroma of something cooking, but that just means you're losing flavor. And that, you know, there's a lot less aroma when you're cooking in a pressure cooker than if you're cooking in a pot with a lid that isn't sealed on. But honestly, I'd rather have the flavor in the food than, you know, going through the bedrooms of my house.
That is quite true,
and that's a really big benefit. And so, you know, I think people don't quite understand that. And so the first recipe that we tell people to make is to make chicken stock, because you make the world's best chicken stock in a pressure cooker. It extracts every bit of flavor from the bones. And if you made homemade stock in a regular pot, make it in a pressure cooker, it will basically taste twice as chickeny as anything you've ever had before.
And it doesn't break down the bones and kind of cause that gelatinous that you sometimes get when you overboil?
You just extract all of the flavor.
Wow.
It's the same ingredients. It's basically the same process. The time
In a fraction
is
of the
obviously
time.
shorter, right?
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where if you do a side-by-side between our best recipe that we make conventionally and the recipe that is in this book, the recipe that's in this book is much better, even though it's the exact same ingredients, because of the way the pressure cooker extracts flavors from the ingredients and then traps them. They can't get out. They're in this case, in the liquid, in the stock.
Now, I've also heard that pressure cookers help foods, particularly vegetables, retain nutrients better. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, it depends about the cooking. I mean, in general, it's because the less cooking time, no matter what you're doing, the less you cook certain things like green vegetables, the more nutrients they're going to have. I think the biggest thing about the nutrients is that you're more likely to make dried beans. You're more likely to make brown rice. You're more likely to make wheat berries because it's so much faster. And that it may be so that there's some nutritional benefits, but the main benefit is that you're actually making foods that are good for you rather than choosing white rice. which is much faster than brown rice, and you can do that on the stove fairly easily. And I think that's the big difference.
Yeah, and also when you steam, the pressure cooker allows for you to really steam with very low water content because it's a sealed space. You see very little steam going out while cooking. So the vegetables tend to retain every nutrient or minerals, salts for the most part, for at the end as an end result. So it really, the benefit that we address in the pressure cooker is you use less fat, you use less water. So the content of where the ingredients or the benefits of the food is going to just wash out doesn't really occur. And at the same time, is to Jack's point, is convenience, time. I mean, it's one fraction of whatever cooking time you will have in a regular or traditional cooking pot.
Give me an example of two recipes, one in the pressure cooker, one out. What would be that time difference?
So I personally love wheat berries. You know, grains are becoming more popular, and
Sure.
wheat berries on the stove top in a conventional recipe, you've got 50 or 60 minutes to cook wheat berries. If you throw them in the pressure cooker as is, it's about 25 minutes. If you plan ahead and soak them before you go to bed and then throw them in the next day, it's 12 minutes. And soaking means just putting them in a bowl of cold water. And so if you soak the beans, you can go from an hour down to 12 minutes in a pressure cooker. And so that puts it in the realm of weeknight cooking. I mean, you're not going to get home from work at 6:30 if you're expecting everyone to have dinner at 7 and begin making something like wheat berries. Same thing with dried beans.
Oh, nice.
Where
Yeah.
dried beans are 10 minutes a lot.
Yeah.
It varies from variety, but dried beans on the stovetop, it's an hour and a half to cook them, and in the pressure cooker can be 10, 12 minutes depending on the variety.
Yeah. What I try actually is risotto in a pressure cooker. Of course, it will never be the one that you have to stay and stir. 7 minutes versus 21 to 5, yeah.
And how did you like the quality of it? Were you satisfied?
It's good. I mean, it might never be exactly what you get, but as Jack was explaining, you develop the taste for that kind of a finished product, for the type of recipe that you're cooking. But the element of time, savings, convenience, and easy of use, and you get a product that is really a gourmet meal type of thing. So yeah.